Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Kendrick Wallace. I'm 36 years old, and until my 5th wedding anniversary, I believe my marriage had problems no more serious than the ones most couples carried quietly. My wife, Vanessa, and I had disagreements about money, work, how often we went out, and whether I was pushing hard enough in my career, but I never thought she was questioning the entire man she had married. That changed on a Saturday night in Baltimore, Maryland, when we gathered with our parents, siblings, and closest friends in the private dining room of an Italian restaurant near the Inner Harbor. About 30 people were there. Everyone was laughing, eating, telling stories about our wedding, and raising glasses to 5 years together. I remember looking across the table at Vanessa and thinking she looked beautiful. I had no idea she had spent months preparing to humiliate me. Near the end of dinner, Vanessa stood and tapped her wine glass lightly with a fork. "I want to make a special toast," she said. The room quieted. My mother smiled. Vanessa's father, Curtis, lifted his glass. I expected something sentimental. Instead, Vanessa looked directly at me. "5 years ago, I married a man with enormous potential," she said. "I love Kendrick, but love cannot mean accepting stagnation forever. So tonight, I'm giving my husband 30 days to become the man I believe this marriage deserves. At the end of those 30 days, I will decide whether we still have the future I thought we would have." The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear silverware clink in the kitchen outside the room. My brother Quentin stared at me. Vanessa's mother, Bernice, lowered her eyes. I felt heat climb into my face, but I refused to give Vanessa the scene she apparently expected. I stood slowly and lifted my own glass. "That is certainly an unexpected anniversary toast," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "I suppose 30 days can reveal a great deal about two people." I took one sip, set my glass down, and excused myself. In the restroom, I gripped the edge of the sink and looked at myself in the mirror. I was angry, but underneath the anger was disbelief. Vanessa had not simply criticized me. She had placed our marriage on public probation in front of the people closest to us. At that moment, I did not know whether she had selected the guest list specifically for the confrontation or merely taken advantage of people who would naturally attend our anniversary. What I knew was that she had chosen an audience. Later, I would discover exactly how deliberate that choice had been. When I returned, the celebration had become painfully artificial. People spoke too loudly about harmless subjects. Quentin kept glancing at me. Vanessa acted as though she had made an ordinary announcement. Before my parents left, my mother, Denise, pulled me aside. "Kendrick, what was that?" she whispered. "I don't know yet," I replied, "but I want to find out." Quentin hugged me and quietly said, "Call me tomorrow." Even Curtis looked uncomfortable when he shook my hand. Vanessa, meanwhile, thanked everyone for coming. During the drive home, she hummed with the radio until I finally turned the volume down. "Are we going to discuss what you did?" I asked. Vanessa looked out the passenger window. "There is nothing complicated about it. I need to know whether you are serious about becoming the husband I know you can be. And humiliating me was necessary." I asked. "Public accountability makes people take commitments seriously," she replied. The next morning became day one. Vanessa was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. Coffee was brewing beside her laptop, and a thick manila folder sat in front of my chair. "Good morning," she said. "We should go over the plan." Inside the folder was an 11-page document titled 30-Day Relationship Growth Plan. It was organized into categories: health, career, personal development, household partnership, social growth, and marriage. There were weekly targets and check-in spaces. It was excessive, but not completely absurd. She wanted me to lose a reasonable amount of weight through better habits, join a good gym, improve my wardrobe, pursue advancement opportunities rather than somehow guarantee a promotion, submit applications for an evening graduate business program, attend professional networking events, begin French lessons, read more, plan dates, participate in couples counseling, and become more intentional about affection and household responsibilities. I closed the folder. "How long have you been working on this?" I asked. Vanessa hesitated. A few months. That answer hurt more than I expected. A few months earlier, I'd thought we were doing well. We had taken a weekend trip to Annapolis. We had talked about replacing our old kitchen cabinets the following year. I had supported Vanessa when she lost out on a management promotion at work, sitting with her until after midnight, while she admitted she felt as though everyone around her was moving forward except us. Looking back, there had been warning signs. She increasingly compared our lives to other couples. A friend bought a larger house, and Vanessa asked why we were still in the same place. Someone from her office posted about her husband becoming a vice president, and Vanessa spent the evening asking whether I had become too comfortable at my company. I had treated those moments as frustration. She had apparently treated them as evidence. "I'm not asking you to become a different person," Vanessa said. "I'm asking you to stop settling." I worked in operations management and had been with the same company for 8 years. I earned a solid salary, paid my share of the bills, contributed to retirement, handled most of the grocery shopping, cooked several nights each week, and had never given Vanessa a reason to question my loyalty. I was not perfect. I had delayed pursuing a management opening because I was uncertain I wanted the additional travel. I had gained weight after a knee injury 2 years earlier. I sometimes spent Saturday afternoons watching football instead of going out. Vanessa was entitled to have concerns. What she was not entitled to do, in my view, was convert those concerns into a unilateral performance review. "Why didn't you talk to me?" I asked. "I tried," she replied. "You always had an explanation." An explanation is not the same thing as refusing to listen. I noticed a small logo at the bottom of the pages. Patrice Holloway, personal development coach. "Who is Patrice Holloway?" I asked. Vanessa brightened slightly. "Dr. Holloway has been helping me organize my thinking." "You hired someone to design a husband improvement program?" "She helped me identify measurable goals." "Has she ever met me?" I asked. "She doesn't need to meet you to help me clarify what I need." I stared at the logo. "Is she a marriage counselor?" "She's a life coach." Vanessa said it impatiently, as though the distinction did not matter. "She has a doctorate in organizational leadership and years of coaching experience." "So she's not our therapist." "No one said she was." I put the folder on the table. "Then I want that distinction remembered, because you have invited a person who has never spoken to me into decisions about my marriage." Vanessa's expression tightened. "This is exactly what Patrice warned me about. You focus on how feedback is delivered instead of whether the feedback is true." That sentence stayed with me. "How much have you told her?" I asked. "Enough to explain the situation." "What does enough mean?" "Kendrick, stop looking for reasons to avoid the real issue." She pushed the folder toward me. "Do you want to save our marriage?" It was a trap disguised as a question. Rejecting the document would allow her to say I had rejected growth. Accepting it meant recognizing her authority to judge me. So I did neither. I picked up the folder and said, "I'll read everything carefully." She smiled for the first time that morning. She thought my resistance was ending. In reality, I had simply decided that before I made any major decision, I needed to understand what had happened to my marriage. I did not begin some reckless campaign to bankrupt us. That would have punished me as much as Vanessa. Instead, I chose the parts of her plan that made sense and completed them for myself. I joined a respected athletic club 10 minutes from my office and booked 3 sessions each week with a trainer named Lionel. I met with a nutrition coach once and built a realistic meal plan. I bought 3 tailored suits, several shirts, 2 pairs of shoes, and better casual clothes while staying inside a budget I could comfortably cover from my personal spending allowance. I scheduled a haircut. I made an appointment with my doctor for a routine physical. When Vanessa saw me leaving for the gym before work on Monday, she smiled. "I knew you would take this seriously once you stopped being defensive," she said. "Maybe you were right about me needing a push," I replied. I let her believe that was the entire story. The professional section turned out to be more useful than I expected. Vanessa had listed 3 networking events each week, which was excessive alongside work and everything else, so I attended 1 strong industry event weekly and 1 smaller professional association meeting when my schedule allowed. At the first event, held at a hotel downtown, I met Warren Ellis, a regional director for a logistics and infrastructure company called Harbor Point Strategy. We discussed supply chain problems for almost 40 minutes. I never mentioned my marriage. I did not make myself a spectacle by telling strangers that my wife had put me on a 30-day improvement plan. I talked about my work, the systems I had built, and the team I supervised. Warren eventually said, "You sound like someone who has outgrown the role you are describing." That sentence followed me home. I began French lessons twice a week instead of trying to become conversational in a month. I registered for an information session at a university outside Baltimore to explore a part-time Master of Business Administration program, knowing admission would take longer than 30 days. I replaced late-night television several evenings each week with reading. I called friends I had neglected. Quentin and I started meeting for breakfast on Saturday mornings. I planned one thoughtful date with Vanessa at a restaurant in Columbia and another afternoon at the Walters Art Museum. I was not trying to prove her right. I was discovering that some changes felt good when they belonged to me. The difference was choice. Vanessa saw the new clothes, the gym schedule, and the calendar invitations, and believed her system was succeeding. I saw the same things and began remembering that my life was bigger than her evaluation. Her reaction should have made me happy. Instead, it unsettled me. She started keeping a spreadsheet. At first, she called a progress tracker. Every Sunday evening, she wanted to review my gym attendance, networking activity, professional applications, reading, language study, household contributions, and the dates I had planned. "This is not necessary," I told her. "It keeps us accountable," she replied. "Us?" I asked. "Where are your goals?" She frowned. "This plan is about the concerns I raised with you." "That it isn't an us plan. It is a me plan." Vanessa insisted we could address her development after my 30 days were complete. That was the first moment I clearly understood the structure she had created. She was not standing beside me as another imperfect person. She had appointed herself evaluator. By the second week, the monitoring intensified. Vanessa sent morning messages asking what I intended to accomplish that day. She wanted confirmation that I had gone to the gym. She asked who attended networking lunches. She wanted to know whether my French tutor had assigned homework. One afternoon, she texted while I was presenting quarterly numbers to a client. "You missed your 2 o'clock check-in. Please update me when you can." I did not answer until the meeting ended. That evening, she said, "Consistency matters." I replied, "So does professionalism. I will not interrupt a client meeting to prove to my wife that I am following a personal development checklist." She opened her laptop. "I'm just trying to support you. Support does not require surveillance." She wrote something down. "What did you just write?" I asked. "That you react strongly to accountability language." I stared at her. "You're taking notes on my reactions now." "Only because patterns matter." That night, I began taking notes too, but mine served a different purpose. I photographed the original plan and saved a copy to secure cloud storage. I kept Vanessa's messages. I wrote short, factual entries after serious conversations, including dates and what was said. I reviewed our bank and credit card statements, not because I suspected theft, but because the relationship had become unpredictable. Our finances were normal. I downloaded statements from my records and activated transaction alerts. On account in my name, I checked my credit reports and made sure there were no unfamiliar accounts. I did not move joint money, conceal funds, or stop paying household bills. I simply wanted an accurate picture of our financial position if the marriage deteriorated further. The act of documenting everything changed me. It forced me to separate what I felt from what I could prove. Around the same time, I researched Patrice Holloway. She had a doctorate, but not in psychology, counseling, social work, or marriage and family therapy. Her website accurately described her as a personal development and executive life coach. There was no claim that she was a licensed marriage therapist. That meant there was no scandal merely because she was coaching Vanessa. The problem was different. Vanessa had begun using Patrice as though Patrice had professionally assessed me, even though the woman had never interviewed me, received my consent, or heard my side of anything. Patrice's polished website talked about accountability, goal design, confidence, and personal transformation. None of that was inherently wrong. What bothered me was the role Vanessa had allowed her to occupy. Our private marriage had become source material for a stranger's strategy sessions. The full extent of that privacy violation appeared unexpectedly. One Thursday evening, Vanessa was showering upstairs while her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. I was not searching through it. We had never treated our devices as forbidden territory, and she had left the screen awake while playing music through a speaker. A notification appeared from Patrice with the subject line Anniversary Intervention Follow-up. I froze. The preview contained one sentence. The public accountability approach appears to have broken through his initial resistance, but remained consistent. I did not open the email immediately. I stood there staring at the words until Vanessa came downstairs. "What is anniversary intervention?" I asked. She stopped on the last step. "What?" I pointed at the screen. Her expression changed. "It's just terminology," Vanessa said quickly. "Open it," I replied. "Kendrick, that is my private email, and apparently it contains private information about me." She came toward the laptop. "We can discuss this without invading my messages. You already invited someone into my private life without permission. I'm asking you to show me what she knows." Vanessa refused. That refusal told me more than any immediate confession would have. I did not grab the computer. I did not demand passwords. I simply said, "Then understand that I'm going to make decisions based on the fact that you are hiding communications about our marriage after publicly threatening that marriage." She accused me of being dramatic. I went upstairs, packed a small overnight bag, and stayed at Quentin's house. The next morning, Vanessa called before I left for work. Her voice sounded tired. "Come home tonight," she said. "I'll show you the emails." I agreed on one condition: no deleted messages and no edited summaries. When I returned, she had printed several email chains. She said she had not deleted anything. I sat at the dining table and started reading. Patrice's language was professional and carefully phrased. She had recommended visible accountability because Vanessa repeatedly described me as dismissive of change. Vanessa had then written, "What if I make the 30-day announcement at our anniversary dinner? Both families will be there. You won't be able to brush it off afterward." Patrice replied that public pressure could create resentment and that Vanessa should consider a private conversation first. Vanessa answered, "Private conversations have not worked. He needs consequences that feel real." Embarrassment may be what finally breaks his resistance. I read that line 3 times. Vanessa sat across from me without speaking. Another message sent 2 weeks before the anniversary said, "I want enough people there that he understands I'm serious. If he thinks I might actually leave, he will finally move." Patrice responded that fear could produce short-term compliance but might damage trust. Vanessa wrote, "Then the trust issue can be repaired after he changes. Right now, I need movement." That was the moment the anniversary became worse in my mind than it had been when I lived through it. Vanessa had not lost control during an emotional toast. She had weighed the cost of humiliating me and consciously decided the damage was acceptable because she believed she could repair me first and repair the marriage afterward. Then I reached the private disclosures. Vanessa had sent Patrice our approximate savings balance, my salary, the amount left on my student loan, and details about a conversation in which I had admitted I feared being laid off during a restructuring 2 years earlier. She told Patrice that I sometimes worried I had disappointed my father by not reaching senior management before 35. That was something I had confessed to Vanessa in bed one night after my father told me how proud he was of me. I had never told Quentin. I had never told my closest friend. Vanessa had also described intimate problems we went through during a stressful period in our marriage, including details I would never have expected her to place into an email. One message called my fear of professional failure a pressure point that may help motivate him. My stomach turned when I read it. "You gave her pieces of me that I gave only to you," I said. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I needed someone to talk to. Talking about your feelings is one thing. Sending our balances, my salary, my insecurities, and intimate details is another. I was trying to explain why I thought you were stuck. You turned vulnerable conversations into evidence." Vanessa shook her head. "That wasn't how I saw it. That is exactly the problem. You never stopped to ask how I would see any of this." She insisted Patrice had never shared the information further. I said, "That does not make it yours to disclose." Vanessa reached toward the papers. I pulled them closer. "May I keep copies of everything concerning me?" I asked. After a long silence, she nodded. I scanned them that night and preserved the original files she voluntarily forwarded to me. Over the following days, I became quieter. Vanessa mistook that for cooperation. I continued going to the gym. I continued French lessons. I attended a leadership breakfast where Warren introduced me to one of Harbor Point's vice presidents. I completed the graduate program, information session, and decided I might actually apply for the next admission cycle. At work, my own director, Gregory, called me into his office after hearing that I had been networking more aggressively. "Are we about to lose you?" he asked. I smiled. "I'm evaluating my options." For years, I had avoided that sentence because I thought loyalty meant staying where I was comfortable. Gregory told me a senior operations position might open during the next quarter and that my name would be part of the discussion. For the first time, I had two credible professional paths instead of one familiar job. Vanessa was delighted. "See," she said when I told her, "this is exactly what I knew you were capable of." She hugged me, genuinely happy, and for a moment I saw the woman I had married. That was what made everything complicated. Vanessa was not pretending to want good things for me. She didn't want me healthier. She didn't want me successful. She believed that if she could force me past what she considered complacency, I would eventually thank her. Her mistake was believing a good outcome justified any method used to produce it. She had confused love with authority. She had decided that because she saw potential in me, she had the right to manage that potential. Every success I achieved strengthened her belief that she had been correct, while every success also showed me that I did not need her permission to grow. Her progress system became more elaborate in week 3. She created categories labeled health consistency, career initiative, cultural engagement, communication responsiveness, and relationship investment. She assigned each a percentage. I finally asked, "What happens if my score is 78 instead of 85? "Nothing happens," she said. "It just shows where improvement is needed." "Then why does my marriage depend on 30 days of scoring?" Vanessa exhaled. "You keep making this sound harsher than it is. You stood in front of our parents and told me you would evaluate whether our marriage was worth continuing. Because I needed you to understand the seriousness. I understood the seriousness when I saw my childhood insecurity described as a motivation tool in an email." She looked away. For once, she had no prepared response. On day 21, I met privately with a divorce attorney named Melinda Harper. I did not file anything that afternoon. I wanted to understand my choices before emotion made them for me. I brought account statements, retirement summaries, mortgage information, and a simple timeline of the previous 3 weeks. Melinda listened carefully. She advised me to preserve records, avoid concealing or dissipating assets, keep ordinary obligations current, and avoid using joint money to punish Vanessa. She told me that if I chose to separate, financial decisions should be documented and deliberate rather than theatrical. That suited me. I opened a new checking account in my name for future personal expenses and left existing joint funds untouched. I kept detailed records of everything. I also began looking at apartments, not because I had decided with certainty that the marriage was finished, but because I wanted the ability to leave calmly if I reached that conclusion. The anniversary humiliation also began producing consequences outside our house. Quentin already knew most of what was happening because I'd stayed with him. My parents knew only that Vanessa and I were struggling until I told them the anniversary speech had been planned for weeks. My mother became quiet. "She planned that?" she asked. I showed her only the email about the public announcement, not the intimate details. My father, Harold, shook his head. "Wanting more from a marriage is one thing," he said. "Putting your spouse on trial in front of both families is another." I asked them not to call Vanessa or create a larger fight. I did not want revenge. I wanted distance. But families talk, especially after they have been forced into something as uncomfortable as our anniversary dinner. Vanessa's parents learned the truth through Vanessa herself after Bernice confronted her about the speech. That conversation did not go the way Vanessa expected. Curtis later called me and asked whether we could meet for coffee. I agreed. He looked exhausted when he arrived. "I'm not calling to interfere in your marriage," he said. "Vanessa told us about the coach and the planning. I told her I was ashamed of how she handled that dinner." I said nothing. Curtis continued, "I understand wanting your spouse to succeed. I wanted more from Bernice at times, and she wanted more from me. But you do not turn your husband into an employee and invite his family to the performance review." I appreciated his words, but I did not use them as ammunition. "She needs to hear that from you." "Not through me," I said. "She already did," Curtis replied. Day 25 arrived, with Vanessa believing we were approaching the finish line. I came home from work carrying a thin gray folder. Not 11 pages. Not 47 requirements. 4 pages. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table reviewing her tracker. "What is that?" she asked. "My relationship evaluation," I replied. Her shoulders stiffened. "I thought we agreed you were going to stop mocking the process." "I'm not mocking anything." I sat across from her. "You taught me that measurable behavior matters. So I measured the things that matter to me." On the first page were 7 categories: respect, honesty, privacy, communication, shared decision-making, accountability, and boundaries with outsiders. Under each category, I listed specific events from the previous month with dates. No insults. No comments about her body, cooking, clothes, hobbies, or personality. I pushed the page toward her. Respect. You publicly announced a threat to our marriage without discussing it with me first. Honesty. You concealed months of planning with Patrice. Privacy. You shared financial, personal, and intimate information I believed was private between us. Communication. When I disagreed with your system, you recorded my disagreement as resistance instead of considering my point. Shared decision-making. You created a program for both our marriage and my life without involving me. Boundaries. You allowed a coach who has never met me to become an authority on my motives. Accountability. You repeatedly describe your intentions as good while minimizing the impact of what you actually did. Vanessa's face hardened. "So this is your revenge?" "No," I said. "My revenge would be humiliating you. I'm doing this privately because privacy is one of the things I'm asking for." Page 2 contained the conditions I would require before I would even consider trying to rebuild the marriage. In the coaching arrangement with Patrice, as it related to managing me. Stop progress reports, scores, surveillance-style check-ins, and unilateral improvement plans. Do not share private information about me or our marriage without discussing appropriate boundaries first, except when seeking legitimate professional or legal support where confidentiality and context are clear. If we both chose counseling, we would select a licensed couples counselor together. Vanessa would acknowledge publicly enough to our immediate families that the anniversary announcement had been planned and that I had not agreed to it. Major decisions affecting the marriage would require both voices. And most importantly, neither spouse would be treated as a project whose worth depended on meeting the other spouse's private standard. Vanessa pushed the pages back toward me. "This is completely different," she said. "How?" I asked. "Because you actually needed improvement." The hypocrisy was so direct that I almost smiled. Instead, I remained quiet. "According to whom?" I asked. "According to me, your wife, the person living with you. And according to me, my wife violated trust, privacy, respect, and basic boundaries. Why is your judgment objective while mine is manipulation?" Vanessa opened her mouth but did not answer. "You told me feedback was valuable even when it was uncomfortable," I continued. "You told me resistance could indicate fear of change. You told me marriage requires measurable accountability. I'm using your language. The only difference is that now the evaluation includes you." She stood and walked toward the window. "You are trying to punish me. I am showing you that equality feels like punishment when you are accustomed to being the evaluator." "So what do you want me to do?" she asked. "I want you to understand that this is no longer about whether I can satisfy your list. I've already learned what I needed to learn." She turned toward me. "Which is what?" "That I like several of the changes I made. I like training. I like dressing better. I like French. I like meeting people in my field. I may apply to graduate school. I may take another job. But those choices belong to me. You did not create my ability. You created a crisis that forced me to notice I had stopped making choices for myself. Her eyes filled. I was trying to help. I believe you. That seemed to surprise her. I believe you convinced yourself this was help. I also believe you knowingly chose humiliation because you thought embarrassing me would make me easier to control. Both things can be true. Vanessa did not agree to my conditions that night. She called them extreme. She said asking her to acknowledge the planned humiliation to our parents would embarrass her. You mean the people you intentionally involved? I asked. She said ending the arrangement with Patrice felt like allowing me to control whom she spoke to. I clarified that she could have friends, advisors, therapists, attorneys, or anyone else she needed. What I would not accept was a private coaching system built around managing my behavior while using confidential details about me as strategy material. If you need individual support, get individual support, I said. But I will not participate in another program designed by someone who has never met me. Vanessa accused me of making everything complicated. I said no. The marriage became complicated the moment one spouse decided she was qualified to redesign the other. On day 27, Harbor Point invited me to interview for a senior operations role. The salary range was substantially higher than my current position, but the bigger attraction was responsibility. Warren had remembered our conversation and recommended me. Vanessa celebrated when I told her. She ordered dinner from one of my favorite restaurants and opened a bottle of wine. I knew this month would change everything, she said. I looked at her across the table. It has. She smiled without understanding what I meant. Later, while she slept, I stood in the kitchen and looked at the apartment listing I had saved on my phone. It was a quiet one-bedroom in Canton with enough space for a desk and a small balcony. For the first time, moving there did not feel like defeat. It felt like a possible life. Day 30 arrived on a Monday. Vanessa removed the original improvement plan from the kitchen drawer and placed it on the table beside my 4-page evaluation. When I came downstairs, there were no charts and no laptop. "Can we talk?" she asked. I poured coffee and sat across from her. She looked exhausted. "I want to cancel everything," she said. "The scores, the deadline, the plan. All of it." I waited. "Why?" She rubbed her hands together. "Because I finally understand what it turned into." "What did it turn into?" I asked. "Control," she whispered. It was the first time she had used the word without immediately defending herself. I kept telling myself I was creating accountability. Then your evaluation made me realize I would never accept you monitoring me the way I monitored you. I asked what had changed beyond receiving my evaluation. Vanessa told me Curtis had spoken to her for nearly an hour. Her mother had cried over the anniversary dinner because she believed she had watched her daughter publicly threaten a marriage instead of trying to save it. Vanessa had also sent Patrice my 4-page evaluation. Patrice had told her that our situation had moved beyond ordinary goal coaching and that we should speak with a qualified couples counselor if we intended to continue the marriage. She also reminded me that she warned me against using public embarrassment, Vanessa admitted. That mattered. Patrice had influenced the system, but the emails proved Vanessa had made the cruelest choice herself. "So you are not blaming her?" I asked. "No," Vanessa said. "She reinforced some things I already believe, but I chose what I did." Vanessa started crying before she continued. "I owe you a real apology. I am sorry I humiliated you on our anniversary. I planned it because I thought fear of losing me would make you change faster. I am sorry I shared your salary, our financial information, the things you told me about your career fears, and private details about our marriage. I had no right to turn those conversations into material for someone else to analyze. I am sorry I reduced you to goals and scores. And I'm sorry I decided I was qualified to determine whether you were worthy of me." She wiped her face. "The ugliest truth is that when I married you, I loved you, but I also love what I imagined you would become. I kept comparing that future version of you to the man standing in front of me, and eventually I stopped appreciating the man I actually had." Her apology reached me. I could tell it was not the same defensive Vanessa who had told me 30 days earlier that I was being dramatic. I also knew an apology did not erase the emails I had read. "I believe you mean that," I said. "Then we can start over," she replied quickly. No, the word came out gently. Vanessa stared at me. You just said you believe me. I do. Sincerity matters. It does not automatically restore trust. She began crying harder. I ended things with Patrice this morning. I already found 3 licensed marriage counselors we can choose from together. I'm glad you're taking this seriously. Then come with me. I shook my head. I'm not promising counseling for reconciliation. I need separation. Real separation. I've already spoken to an attorney, and I've found an apartment. Vanessa looked as if I had struck the table between us. You talked to a divorce lawyer? Yes. Behind my back? I sought legal advice about my own rights after you publicly placed our marriage on a deadline, and after I discovered you had spent months planning with an outsider. I did not hide money. I did not empty accounts. I did not create debt. I documented what existed and asked how to leave responsibly if leaving became necessary. She stared down at her hands. Are you filing? Yes, I said. I'm going to begin the process. I'm not saying that because I hate you. I'm saying it because I no longer want to live in a marriage where trust has to be rebuilt from the foundation while I'm still standing inside the wreckage. That evening, I packed clothing, work equipment, personal documents, and a few things I needed for the week. I did not strip the house. I did not take furniture we had bought together. I did not touch Vanessa's belongings. Quentin came with his sport utility vehicle because I had asked him to help me move boxes. Vanessa stood in the hallway, watching quietly. Before I carried the last box outside, she said, I really thought you would thank me one day. I stopped. For what? For pushing you. Look at you now. You're healthier. You're interviewing for a better position. You're applying to school. You're more confident. I nodded. Those things are real. Then part of me was right. About my ability? Yes. About your right to humiliate me into discovering it? No. 2 days later, I signed a lease on the apartment in Canton. Melinda helped me organize the next legal steps while keeping financial records transparent. Vanessa and I agreed in writing on how ordinary household bills would be handled while things moved forward. There was no dramatic account draining and no revenge spending. I took what belonged clearly to me, documented everything else, and continued contributing to obligations I was responsible for until formal arrangements changed. For the first few nights, the apartment felt strangely empty. Then the quiet started feeling different. Nobody asked for a progress report when I came home. Nobody wanted proof that I had gone to the gym. Nobody converted a missed French lesson into evidence about my character. I could improve because I wanted to rest when I needed to and decide which goals actually belonged in my life. Harbor Point offered me the senior operations position 3 weeks later. I accepted after giving my current employer proper notice. Gregory shook my hand and told me he hated losing me, but understood. You should have tested the market years ago, he said. Maybe he was right. I kept training 3 mornings each week. I continued French lessons because I enjoyed them. I submitted my graduate school application for the following term instead of trying to force an admissions process into a 30-day deadline. I also started seeing an individual licensed therapist. Not because Vanessa had ordered emotional development, but because I wanted a neutral place to understand why I had ignored some of our warning signs for so long. The changes remained after the ultimatum disappeared. That was how I knew they had become mine. The people who had witnessed our anniversary learned the truth gradually, not through some revenge campaign. My parents knew. Quentin knew. Vanessa eventually apologized directly to both sets of parents and to her sister, Felicia, for placing them in the middle of a private marital conflict. She called my mother personally. Denise told me afterward that Vanessa had not made excuses. Curtis later sent me a message saying he respected the fact that I had not tried to turn the family against his daughter. I told him that there was nothing to gain from doing that. Vanessa would remain part of my life legally until the divorce was finished, and part of the memories of 5 important years after that. I did not need everyone to hate her in order to leave her. 3 months after I moved out, Vanessa asked if we could meet for coffee. We chose a quiet place near Patterson Park. She looked different, though not in any dramatic physical way. She seemed less certain of every sentence before she spoke it. She told me she had continued individual counseling. She had stopped working with Patrice, not because Patrice was a criminal or fake therapist, but because Vanessa realized she had used coaching to validate decisions that should have been discussed with her husband. I kept asking her how to get you to change, Vanessa said. I should have been asking you how you felt about our marriage. I nodded. That would have changed a lot. I know. She looked down at her coffee. I wish understanding that now could undo what I did. Vanessa asked one final time whether there was any possibility of stopping the divorce. She did not beg. She did not make another list. I understand now that I was trying to make you prove you deserved to stay married to me, she said. I should have been asking whether I was behaving like someone you would feel safe staying married to. I appreciated the honesty. I hope you keep working on that, I replied. Not for me. For yourself. Tears formed in her eyes, but she smiled faintly. That sounds familiar. Maybe we both learned something during those 30 days. She reached across the table, then stopped before touching my hand. I'm sorry, Kendrick. I know, and you still cannot come back. I shook my head. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same decision. By the 6th month, the divorce process was moving forward, my new job was going well, and my apartment finally looked lived in instead of temporary. I had lost weight gradually without chasing a number Vanessa selected. I had become stronger, but the physical change mattered less than the fact that I no longer measured myself through her approval. Warren had become both a colleague and a friend. Quentin and I still met for breakfast most Saturdays. My parents visited often enough that my mother had begun complaining about my lack of dining chairs. I laughed more. I slept better. My finances were stable. Most importantly, when I made plans for the next year, I did not imagine someone standing beside me with a clipboard deciding whether I was progressing quickly enough. One Friday evening, Vanessa came by to drop off a folder of documents that needed my signature. We stood outside my apartment for a moment after everything was signed. She glanced past me at the small living room, the books on the shelf, my gym bag beside the door, and a French workbook open on the table. You kept all of it, she said. Most of it, even after leaving me. I was never against growth, Vanessa. I was against being told that love depended on passing your examination. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. She looked at me for several seconds and said, those 30 days really did turn you into the man I thought you could become. I smiled, but there was no anger left in it. No, those 30 days taught me something more important. Vanessa waited. I picked up the signed folder and handed it to her. You gave me 30 days to become the man you believed you deserved, I said. But somewhere in those 30 days, I finally learned what kind of treatment I deserved. She lowered her eyes, nodded once, and walked toward her car. I closed the door behind her, set my keys on the counter, and returned to the life I had chosen for myself. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.